Overseer Krull's eyes widened as he stared out the Pakled flagship's viewport at the colossal metal humanoid rising from the moon's shattered surface. After a century subjugating inferior species across the galaxy, Pakled Interstellar's campaign to strip Earth of resources was meant to be an easy conquest. Instead, Krull now faced a planet-sized war machine crewed by the very humans he sought to enslave. The titanic Mech, forged in secret beneath the lunar crust, climbed from its ancient cradle on pillars of fusion fire. Its armored skin shimmered under the unfiltered sunlight, making Krull's mighty dreadnoughts look like toys. This was the hidden ace that the Earthlings had kept up their sleeves through decades of careful subterfuge, an avatar for their defiant spirit now unleashed. On the bridge of the giant robot named Titan, Will Freeman gripped the command console, knuckles white. The former soldier carried the weight of Earth's survival on his shoulders. He glanced to his side, meeting the determined gaze of Ymir, the hulking alien warrior who had defected from the Paklids to join the human resistance. As the moon fell away below and the Paklid fleet swelled to fill the forward screens, Freeman felt a sense of calm wash over him. Let the overseers tremble at humanity's true strength. This battle would decide the fate of two worlds, the future of freedom in the galaxy. He clasped Ymir's battle-scarred hand, a gesture of solidarity between unlikely allies. Then he turned back to the viewport, eyes hard. "Let's show these corporate bastards what it means to be human," Freeman rasped. "All hands, battle stations, Titan is go!" The view screen flickered as a salvo of plasma bolts slammed into Titan's armor, rattling Will Freeman's teeth. He gripped the control yoke, wrenching the Mech into a barrel roll to evade the incoming fire. Colossal metal fists lashed out, swatting Paklid destroyers from the sky like gnats. "Reactor output falling," Ymir barked, clawed fingers dancing over the engineering console, rerouting power to forward shields. Freeman gritted his teeth as Titan shuddered under another barrage. The Mech's skin was pockmarked with scars, its once gleaming surface scorched and dented. For every ship they destroyed, 3 more rose up to take its place, an unending tide of alien steel. "We can't keep this up," Freeman growled. "There's too many of them." Ymir opened his mouth to reply, but his words were lost as a searing lance of light speared through Titan's chest. The Mech convulsed, sparks fountaining from ruptured conduits. Freeman cursed, fighting to stabilize their trajectory. On the frontier, Zara crept through the shadows of the Paklid supply depot, weapon clutched tight. Towering racks of ordnance and crates of raw materials stretched out before her. Somewhere in this maze lay the key to her people's salvation. Her comm crackled. "Zara, we found something. You need to see this." She followed the signal to a cavernous hangar where her fellow rebels stood before a massive holoscreen. Glowing readouts scrolled past, detailing shipments of precious metals, rare gases, and refined alloys, all stripped from conquered worlds and funneled to Paklid factories. Zara's fists clenched. Her own planet, Azalea, was just another name on that list, bled dry to feed the Overseer's insatiable war machine. Rage ignited in her chest, hot and hungry. Aboard the flagship, Overseer Krull loomed over Commander Rylos, eyes blazing with fanatic light. "Release the nanobots," he snarled. "Tear that abomination apart from the inside." Rylos swallowed, finger hovering over the release controls. "Overseer, the nanoswarm is untested. We have no idea what it might—" "I don't pay you to think, Rylos," Krull roared. "I pay you to obey. Now release them." Rylos stabbed the button. In the void, glittering clouds erupted from the flagship's hull, swirling toward Titan like a plague of mechanical locusts. They slipped through rents in the Mech's armor, worming into its guts, its brain. Ymir convulsed as the nanobots sank their digital claws into Titan's neural network. His console flashed with cascading failure warnings. "Will, we're losing control. Navigation, weapons, power. It's all shutting down." Freeman hammered his fist against the bulkhead, despair welling up like bile. Earth's cities burned below, defenseless against the Paklid onslaught. Titan, humanity's last hope, drifted helpless, paralyzed by the insidious machines. In that darkest moment, Ymir reached out, gripping Freeman's shoulder. His voice dropped to a whisper. There may be one chance, one final hope to stop this. What? How? The Forge, Ymir rasped, the heart of the Pakled Empire, where they build their fleets, their weapons. If we could strike there, cripple their ability to make war. Freeman stared at his friend, a glimmer of desperate hope kindling in his chest. Can we make it there? In this condition? We have to try. It's the only way. Will nodded grimly. He wrenched Titan into a lurching turn, aiming their crippled steed toward the distant stars. As they limped away from Earth, still locked in the nanobot's thrall, a garbled transmission blossomed on the console. Zara's face swam into focus, fierce and proud. Commander Freeman, I am Zara of the Azalea Resistance. I have information you need. A way to hurt the Pakleds. Freeman leaned forward, eyes narrowed. An alien. But right now, any port in a storm. I'm listening, he said. The seeds of an impossible plan took root in his mind as stars blurred past the view screen. If they could link up with these rebels, raid the Forge, cut the head off the snake. Freeman glanced at Ymir, who nodded. He turned back to Zara. Send us your coordinates. Looks like we're going to be working together. As Titan vanished into warp space, the Pack-led fleet close behind, an ember of hope burned amid the cold void. The battle was lost. But the war was just beginning. The warp engines thrummed as Titan emerged from fold space, the massive mech drifting to a halt before a sprawling industrial complex. Will Freeman's eyes widened as he took in the sight. The Forge, nestled within a dense asteroid field, its metallic structures glinting in the light of a nearby star. Look at the size of that thing, Ymir growled, his clawed fingers dancing over the tactical display. It's a whole damn city. Will nodded grimly. And we're going to tear it apart. He turned to the small team of human rebels gathered on Titan's bridge. You all know the plan. We go in fast and quiet, find that fusion reactor, and blow this place sky high. As the team made final preparations, a sleek ship materialized alongside Titan. The comm crackled to life, and Zara's face appeared on the console. Commander Freeman, she said, her alien features set in a determined expression. My people are in position. We've identified a weakness in the Forge's perimeter defenses. Will leaned forward. What's the catch? Zara's eyes hardened. Commander Rylos leads a fleet of advanced warships protecting the facility. We'll need to draw them away if you hope to breach the Forge's outer hull. Leave that to us, Will said, a plan already forming. He turned to Ymir. Think you can pilot this tin can and give those Pack-led ships a run for their money? Ymir's toothy grin was all the answer Will needed. Minutes later, Titan burst into motion, fusion thrusters flaring as it weaved through the asteroid field. Pack-led warships scrambled to intercept, energy weapons lashing out and scorching Titan's armored hide. Inside the Forge, Will and his team moved swiftly through shadowed corridors. The air was thick with the acrid stench of molten metal and ozone. As they rounded a corner, Will froze, his breath catching in his throat. Before them stretched a vast chamber, filled with rows upon rows of alien workers. Chained to assembly lines, they labored under the watchful eyes of Pack-led overseers. The sight of such suffering ignited a fire in Will's chest. Ymir's voice crackled over the comm. Will, we've got a situation. These workers, I can't leave them. Will hesitated, torn between the mission and the plight of the slaves. Do it, he said finally. We'll buy you time. As Ymir led a daring breakout, alarms blared throughout the facility. Will and his team fought their way through waves of Pack-led security forces, their weapons echoing in the cavernous halls. They reached the fusion reactor control room, only to find it guarded by a hulking alien mercenary. Kragoth, his scales gleaming under harsh lights, hefted a massive energy axe. You will go no further, human, he snarled. Will tossed aside his rifle, settling into a fighting stance. We'll see about that. The two warriors clashed in a furious exchange of blows. Will's speed and agility were matched against Kragoth's raw power. Sparks flew as the alien's axe carved through bulkheads, missing Will by inches. With a desperate lunge, Will slipped past Kragoth's guard, His fist connected with the alien's jaw, and Kragoth crumpled to the floor. Panting, Will staggered to the reactor controls. His fingers flew over the console, initiating the overload sequence. But as warning klaxons blared, a horrifying realization dawned. "No," Will breathed, staring at the readouts. "The chain reaction. It'll take out half the system." The control room door hissed open, and Zara burst in, her face flushed from battle. "Will, we have a plan!" She quickly outlined their daring strategy, using Titan to physically remove the reactor and detonate it safely in deep space. Will's mind raced, weighing the risks. Finally, he nodded. "Let's do it." They sprinted back to Titan, dodging falling debris as the forge began to tear itself apart. Will slid into the pilot's seat, his hands wrapping around the controls. With a thunderous groan, Titan's massive arms plunged into the forge's superstructure. Metal screamed and tore as the mech wrenched the fusion reactor free. Pakled ships swarmed around them, energy beams slicing through space. But Zara's rebels were there, their fighters dancing between asteroids, drawing fire away from Titan. Will gritted his teeth, pouring every ounce of power into Titan's engines. They burst free of the asteroid field, the fusion reactor clutched in the mech's grasp like a fiery heart. "Now!" Will roared. Titan's arms swung wide, hurling the reactor into the void. For a moment, all was silent. Then a newborn sun blossomed in the darkness, its light washing over Titan's scarred hull. As the blinding flash faded, Will saw the Pakled fleet scattered, their once mighty armada reduced to drifting wreckage. On Titan's bridge, Will turned to Zara. Their eyes met, a moment of shared victory and unspoken connection passing between them. But before either could speak, a priority transmission cut through the silence. A desperate voice, crackling with static. "To any who can hear us, this is the resistance on Novalis Thura. We need help. The Paklids are—" The message dissolved into noise, but its meaning was clear. Will looked at Zara, then to Ymir, who stood amid a group of newly liberated aliens. No words were needed. They had struck a mighty blow against the Pakled Interstellar, but the fight was far from finished. With grim determination, Will plotted a course for Novalis III, and Titan surged forward, carrying hope to yet another embattled world. Titan's warp engines flared as it emerged from fold space near Corvin. Will Freeman's eyes narrowed at the sight of the planet, its atmosphere a sickly yellow-green swirl. "Sensors detecting heavy Pakled presence in orbit," Ymir growled, clawed fingers dancing over tactical displays. "Ground-based defenses active." Will nodded grimly. "Looks like our distress call was genuine. Zara, what's the situation?" The alien rebel's face appeared on the interface, her expression taut. "Corvin is in open revolt. The Paklades have strip-mined the planet, forcing the native Corvin into slave labor. A resistance movement has formed, led by a warrior named Luxia." "Then let's give them a hand," Will said. He turned to the rebel ships flanking Titan. "All craft, form up behind us. We're going in hot." Titan plunged into Corvin's toxic atmosphere, its massive form shielding the smaller ships from orbital fire. Pakled energy beams lashed out, scoring Titan's armor but failing to penetrate. As they neared the surface, Will spotted flashes of weapons fire around a sprawling industrial complex. "There's our target," he said. "The primary dilithium mining facility. Ymir, you're with me on the ground. Zara, coordinate our air support." Titan touched down with earth-shaking force. Will and Ymir disembarked, leading a team of rebel fighters toward the sounds of battle. They rounded a corner to find a group of Corvin rebels pinned down by Pakled security forces. A lithe, purple-skinned figure vaulted over a barricade, dual energy pistols blazing. Pakled troops fell before her onslaught. "Luxia, I presume?" Will called out as he and Ymir joined the fray. The Corvin warrior flashed a fierce grin. "About time you showed up. We're pushing for the main gates, but those gun emplacements are giving us hell." Will nodded to Ymir. "We'll take care of that. Titan." The colossal mech's arm cannon swiveled, unleashing a devastating barrage. Pakled defenses crumbled under the assault. "Now!" Luxia shouted. Corvin rebels surged forward, pouring through the breached gates. Inside the mining complex, Will's stomach churned at the sight of endless rows of emaciated prisoners, forced to work in hellish conditions. Pack-led overseers cracked energy whips, driving the Corvin R to exhaustion and beyond. "This ends now," Will snarled. He raised his rifle, taking aim at the nearest overseer. The battle raged through twisting tunnels and vast caverns. Luxia's guerrilla fighters struck from the shadows, sowing chaos in pack-led ranks. Will and Ymir spearheaded the main assault, their weapons cutting down swaths of enemy troops. "Will!" Zara's voice crackled over the comm. "Pack-led reinforcements incoming. Their fleet is moving to bombard your position." He cursed, mind racing. "We need a shield, something to protect these people." His eyes fell on a massive vein of raw dilithium ore. An idea sparked. "Ymir, how fast can you process that stuff?" The alien engineer's eyes gleamed. "Fast enough. What do you have in mind?" Will outlined his plan. Ymir barked orders to the freed Corvin R miners, who set to work extracting and shaping the dilithium. Outside, Titan's massive arms began assembling the crystalline plates into an immense dome. The ground shook as pack-led ships unleashed their fury, but where their weapons struck the dilithium shield, they fizzled and died. "It's working," Luxia cried, purple eyes wide with awe. With the mining complex secure, Will turned his attention to the orbiting pack-led fleet. "Titan, you're up. Show these bastards what you can do." The titanic Mech rocketed skyward, energy crackling around its fists. Pack-led ships swarmed to intercept, only to be swatted aside like insects. On the ground, Luxia coordinated strikes against pack-led ground forces, exploiting weaknesses as Titan drew their fire. In the heart of the mining complex, Zara pored over captured pack-led data cores. Her brow furrowed. "Will, I'm seeing something strange here. Reports of pack-led factions we thought were enemies working together. There's mention of a new leader, someone powerful enough to unite them." Before Will could respond, an urgent transmission cut through the comm static. "To all rebel forces, this is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Fleet. We have reports of a massive pack-led armada converging on the waterworld Shri. Billions of lives are at risk. We need immediate assistance." Will's fists tight. They'd won here, but the war was just getting started. He turned to Luxia and Zara. "How fast can we get to Shri?" "Shri?" Will's voice carried a mix of willpower and concern. "We can make it. Ymir, plot the fastest course. Luxia, we could use your help." The purple-skinned warrior nodded. "My people owe you a debt. We'll stand with you." As Titan streaked through fold space, Will studied the tactical readouts. Shri's vast oceans filled the display, dotted with sprawling underwater metropolises. "Pack-led fleet incoming," Ymir growled. "ETA, 10 minutes." Will's fingers flew over the controls. "All rebel mechs, form up. We're establishing a defensive perimeter around the major cities." Titan plunged into Shri's cerulean depths, its systems adapting to the crushing pressure. An energy field enveloped the mech, allowing it to move unhindered through the alien sea. Zara's face appeared on the comm. "Will, we've set up an undersea base. I'm coordinating from here." As Will maneuvered Titan into position, a shadow fell across the ocean. The pack-led invasion fleet had arrived. "Multiple contacts," Ymir barked. "They're launching something." Swarms of sleek, robotic forms descended through the water. Will's eyes widened as he realized their purpose. "Those are harvester drones. They're after civilians." Titan's arms swung wide, energy cannons blazing. The ocean boiled around them as rebel mechs engaged the harvesters. Torpedoes streaked through churning currents, while lasers cut through the murk. "Shrian forces moving to support," Zara reported, synchronizing their attacks with ours. The battle raged across Shri's ocean floor. Will grappled with harvester drones, Titan's massive fists crushing their hulls. But for every drone destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. A familiar voice crackled over the comm. "This is Commander Rylos. My ship's been hit. We're evacuating, but—" Static filled the channel. Will's blood ran cold as he saw Rylos's crippled vessel plummeting toward Shri's capital. "He's on a collision course." Before anyone could react, Ymir's mech rocketed past Titan. "Not today," the alien engineer snarled. Ymir's mech slammed into Rylos's ship, energy shields flaring as it absorbed the impact. The two craft tumbled away from the city, erupting in a massive underwater explosion. "Ymir!" Will shouted. He spotted the engineer's battered mech drifting in the current and raced to retrieve it. As Titan brought Ymir's crippled machine back to base, a chilling transmission cut through the chaos. On every screen, a familiar face appeared. Overseer Krull, now adorned with ornate markings of supreme authority. "Rebels of Earth and her allies," Krull's voice dripped with malice. "Your resistance is futile. Behold the price of defiance." The camera panned to reveal a captive alien woman, her features strikingly similar to Zara's. Krull's eyes gleamed. "Surrender Zara to Admiral Malrig's forces, or watch her sister die." Will turned to find Zara, her face ashen. "I have to go," she whispered. "Wait." Will's mind raced. "We have options. Ymir's hurt, but his neural matrix is intact. If we can transfer it to a new mech." Understanding dawned in Zara's eyes. "A Trojan horse." Will nodded. "You pretend to surrender. Get close to Malrig. We'll be right behind you." As they prepared to put their plan into motion, Will caught sight of a massive pack-led warship descending through Shree's atmosphere. Admiral Malrig had arrived, ready to crush the rebellion once and for all. Will's face hardened. The real battle was just beginning. Will's eyes locked onto the massive pack-led warship descending through Shree's atmosphere. Admiral Malrig had arrived, ready to crush the rebellion once and for all. But before Will could enact his plan to rescue Zara's sister, a priority transmission cut through the chaos. Commander Rylos's face appeared on the screen, his expression grim. "Freeman, we've uncovered something horrifying," Rylos said, his voice tight. "Overseer Krull isn't just conquering worlds. He's weaponizing them. Entire inhabited planets, drained of resources and rendered uninhabitable." Will's blood ran cold. "How?" "They're targeting Malka Prime next," Rylos continued. "It's home to millions of our allies. If we don't act fast, they'll—" The transmission cut out as another volley of pack-led fire rocked their position. Will's mind raced, weighing their options. They couldn't abandon Shree, but Malka's advanced civilization could turn the tide of the war if saved. "Zara," Will called over the comm. "Change of plans. We're making a preemptive strike on Malka. Can you coordinate civilian evac?" "On it," she replied, her voice steely with drive. Will turned to Ymir, who had just finished transferring his consciousness to a new mech. "You up for this?" The alien engineer's new frame hummed with energy. "Always." Titan rocketed out of Shree's ocean, leading a squadron of allied mechs. As they breached the atmosphere, Will saw the rebel fleet already engaging pack-led forces. "All ships, form up," Will commanded. "We're opening a path to Malka Prime. Protect those evacuee carriers at all costs." The journey to Malka was a gauntlet of constant combat. Pack-led ships swarmed from every direction, their weapons tearing into the rebel fleet. Will gritted his teeth as Titan absorbed blow after punishing blow. They emerged from fold space into Malka's system to find chaos already unfolding. Pack-led harvester drones swarmed the planet's surface like locusts, while massive extraction ships hovered in low orbit. "Titan, you're clear for atmospheric entry," Zara's voice crackled over the comm. "Luxia and I are coordinating evac points. We'll guide you in." Will plunged Titan through Malka's upper atmosphere, the mech's armor glowing white-hot from the friction. As they broke through the cloud layer, Will's heart sank at the devastation below. Once gleaming cities were reduced to rubble. Malkan defenders fought valiantly against waves of harvester drones, but they were hopelessly outmatched. Titan touched down in what remained of Malka's capital. Thousands of civilians streamed toward the waiting evacuee carriers, their faces etched with fear and desperation. "Will!" Luxia's voice cut through the din. "We've got incoming!" He turned to see a massive pack-led warship descending through the clouds, its weapons already charging. "Ymir, with me!" Will shouted. "We need to buy these people more time." The two mechs launched themselves at the pack-led ship, energy weapons blazing. They tore into its hull, ripping apart weapon emplacements and shield generators. But as they fought, Will saw more Pakled ships entering orbit. His heart sank as he recognized the flagship. "Supreme Admiral Malrig," he growled. The comm crackled to life, and Malrig's sneering face filled the screen. "Did you really think you could outmaneuver us, Freeman? Your pathetic rebellion ends here." Pakled ships formed a blockade, trapping the rebels in Malka's gravity well. Energy beams lanced down from orbit, obliterating entire city blocks. "Will, we can't hold them off much longer." Zara's voice was strained. "The evac's only 60% complete." Will watched as Emir's experimental mech took a direct hit, shielding Titan from a barrage of heavy ordnance. The engineer's consciousness flickered, transferring once again to a new frame, as his battered shell crashed to the ground. "All ships, prepare for emergency jump," Will ordered, his voice raw. "We're getting out of here." As Titan covered the last of the evacuee transports, Will caught a final glimpse of Malka's surface. The planet's crust was already beginning to disintegrate under the Pakled's extraction process. They fled into fold space, leaving behind the agonized screams of those they couldn't save. Will's hands shook on Titan's controls as the realization sank in. They'd suffered a devastating defeat, and the war had taken a horrifying new turn. Hours later, in the relative safety of their hidden base, Will stood before the assembled rebel leadership. Faces were grim, spirits low. "We can't fight them world by world," Will said, his voice leaden with exhaustion. "We need to strike at the heart of Pakled power." Zara stepped forward, holding a datapad. "I may have something. A contact on Nelrad just sent us some intel. Have you ever heard of the Forge Barons?" Will's eyes narrowed. "No, who are they?" "A cabal of Pakled industrialists," Zara explained. "They've been bankrolling Pakled Interstellar for years, profiting from every conquest. Without their support, Krull's war machine could crumble." Will nodded slowly, a plan beginning to form. "And how do we get to them?" Zara's eyes gleamed. "They're holding their annual summit on Nelrad in 2 weeks. It's our chance to infiltrate and strike a decisive blow." "Nelrad's security is top-notch," Ymir growled. "It won't be easy." "No," Will agreed, "but it's our best shot. Let's get to work." As the rebels began preparations for their daring assault on Nelrad, none of them realized that dark forces were aligning against both them and the Pakleds. The true scope of the conflict was about to expand beyond anything they had imagined. The rebel team's shuttle glided silently through Nelrad's upper atmosphere, its stealth systems rendering it invisible to the planet's sophisticated defense grid. Will adjusted his ill-fitting servant's uniform, his muscles tense beneath the thin fabric. "Remember," he whispered to his team, "we're here to serve drinks and keep our mouths shut. No heroics until we're in position." Zara nodded, her eyes hard with perseverance. Ymir grunted, his bulky frame barely suppressed by the uniform. The opulent resort sprawled below them, a gaudy monument to excess amid Nelrad's pristine wilderness. As they disembarked, Will's senses were assaulted by the sickly sweet scent of exotic flowers and the distant strains of alien music. Inside, the annual summit of the Forge Barons was in full swing. Will's stomach churned as he moved through the crowd, offering drinks to beings whose combined wealth could end poverty across entire star systems. A commotion near the center of the main hall drew his attention. An obese alien, his blubbery flesh adorned with glittering jewels, reclined on a massive hovering throne. Will recognized him from the intelligence briefings. Baron Venex. "Another round," Venex bellowed, his multiple chins quivering, "and bring out the entertainment." 2 guards dragged forward a pair of humanoid females, their bodies bruised and eyes vacant. Will felt Zara stiffen beside him. "Fight," Venex commanded, spraying spittle. "Fight for your master's pleasure." The women began to circle each other warily. One of them looked up, and Will heard Zara's sharp intake of breath. "Lara," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Will gripped her arm, his fingers digging into her flesh. "Not yet," he hissed. The fake smiles plastered on their faces. They continued to serve drinks as the horrific spectacle unfolded. Will's earpiece crackled softly. "Charges set," Ymir's gravelly voice reported. "Ready on your mark." Will tapped his comm twice in acknowledgement. He caught Zara's eye and gave a tiny nod. The world exploded. Synchronized explosions rocked the resort, shattering windows and sending panicked aliens scrambling for exits. Will vaulted over an overturned table, discarding his servant's outfit to reveal combat gear underneath. "Ymir, command hub!" he shouted over the chaos. "Zara, get your sister!" They split up, Will and Ymir fighting their way through disoriented security forces. They reached the hub, a sterile chamber filled with holographic displays and purring servers. "Watch my back," Will ordered, his fingers flying over the computer interface. Data streamed across the screens, financial records, shipping manifests, coordinates of ravaged worlds. The evidence of the Forge Baron's complicity in galactic suffering was staggering. "Uploading now," Will said grimly. A scream of rage echoed from the direction of Venex's chambers. Will's blood ran cold. "Zara," he whispered. Ymir nodded. "Go, I'll finish here." Will sprinted through blood-smeared corridors, the sounds of combat growing louder. He burst into Venex's private quarters to find a scene of carnage. Zara lay crumpled against a wall, her uniform stained crimson. Venex loomed over her, a ceremonial dagger raised high. A blur of motion, the glint of steel. Venex's eyes widened in shock as he stared down at the blade protruding from his chest. Behind him stood Lara, her hands shaking, but her gaze steady. "No more," she said softly. The resort shuddered as explosions continued to rock the compound. Will helped Zara to her feet, supporting her weight. "We need to move," he urged. They stumbled toward the landing pad, Lara close behind. The night sky blazed with weapons fire as the rebel fleet engaged Nelrad's orbital defenses. A massive hologram flickered to life above the resort, Overseer Krull's face contorted with fury. "You incompetent fools!" he raged. "I trusted you to—" The transmission cut off abruptly as Commander Rylos stepped into view, his uniform spattered with alien blood. "Your trust was misplaced," Rylos said coldly, raising his weapon. The remaining Forge Barons fell in a hail of energy blasts. Rylos turned, his eyes locking with Will's across the distance. "I am Overlord now," he declared, "and this galaxy will burn." The sky above them shimmered as a massive cloaked armada decloaked, dwarfing the rebel fleet. Will's eyebrows furrowed as he helped Zara and Lara into the waiting shuttle. "This isn't over, Rylos," he growled. As they lifted off, Will saw Ymir sprinting across the landing pad, pursued by Rylos's troops. "Go!" the alien engineer shouted. "I'll overload the core. Save yourselves!" The shuttle's hatch sealed shut, cutting off Will's anguished cry. They rocketed into the turbulent skies of Nelrad, leaving their friend behind. The shuttle shuddered as it punched through Nelrad's atmosphere, leaving behind the inferno that had been the Forge Baron's opulent resort. Will's fingers tightening as he gripped the controls, his teeth gritted against the ache of loss. "Ymir," he whispered, the name heavy on his tongue. Zara stirred beside him, her face pale beneath the smears of blood and grime. "We can't let his sacrifice be in vain," she said, her voice raw. Will nodded, swallowing hard. "Set course for the rendezvous point. We need to regroup." Days later, the remaining rebel leadership gathered in the cramped war room of their hidden base. Holographic displays flickered with damage reports and casualty lists, a stark testament to their losses on Nelrad. "Rylos played us," Commander Lux growled, his tentacles writhing with agitation. "While we focused on the Forge Barons, he was consolidating power." Will leaned forward, studying the strategic overlay. "He's pulling his forces back, concentrating them around something called the Forge. Zara, what do we know about it?" Zara's fingers danced across her datapad. "It's the Pac-Led's primary weapons manufacturing hub. Massive industrial complex, heavily fortified." "If Rylos gets that place running at full capacity," Lux interjected, "we won't stand a chance." The room fell silent, the weight of their predicament settling over them like a shroud. Will's mind raced, piecing together fragments of a plan. "We hit it," he said finally. "A two-pronged attack. One team infiltrates the Forge itself, sabotages it from within. Meanwhile, Titan and the main fleet engage Rylos head-on, split his forces." Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the assembled rebels. "It's insane," Lux protested. "The casualties would be—" "Acceptable," Zara cut in, her eyes hard. "Because if we don't, we're dead anyway." She turned to Will. "I'll lead the infiltration team." Will opened his mouth to argue, but the willpower in Zara's gaze stopped him cold. He nodded, knowing there was no dissuading her. "I'm coming too," a gravelly voice rumbled. Will turned to see Karak, a hulking alien mercenary, step forward. "I've seen what the pack lads do. It's time I picked a side." As the rebels dispersed to prepare, Will found himself alone with Vera, a human pilot whose homeworld had been one of the first to fall to the Packlets. "You ready for this?" he asked, noting the barely contained fury in her eyes. Vera's hand tightened on the hilt of her sidearm. "Born ready," she growled. "Let's make these bastards pay." The next hours passed in a blur of preparations. Weapons were distributed, plans finalized, goodbyes exchanged. All too soon, Will found himself strapped into Titan's command chair, the vast expanse of space stretching before him. "All ships, report in," he ordered, his voice steady despite the knot of tension in his gut. One by one, the rebel fleet sounded off. Will took a deep breath, his finger hovering over the warp initiator. "For Emir," he whispered, "for everyone we've lost. Let's finish this." Titan surged forward, reality bending around it as the rebel armada plunged into the unknown. The battle erupted in a maelstrom of energy beams and explosions. Titan shuddered under the onslaught of Rylos's forces, alarms blaring as systems strained to compensate. "Vera, you're clear!" Will shouted over the din. "Go!" In Titan's belly, Vera and her squad strapped themselves into the Mech's launcher pods. She flashed a feral grin at her team. "See you on the other side," she said, then slammed the launch initiator. The pods rocketed away from Titan, streaking towards the looming bulk of the forge. As they hurtled through space, Vera's mind flashed to her decimated homeworld, fueling her tenacity. Inside the forge itself, Zara's infiltration team moved like shadows through a maze of conveyor belts and assembly lines. The acrid stench of molten metal filled the air, punctuated by the hiss of hydraulics and the clanging of machinery. "This way," Karak growled, gesturing towards a secondary access tunnel. They rounded a corner and froze. Before them stretched a vast chamber filled with rows upon rows of alien workers, their bodies connected to the machines by a nightmarish array of tubes and wires. "By the void," one of Zara's Malkan soldiers whispered, her voice choked with horror. Zara's fists clenched. "We shut this place down," she hissed, "no matter the consequences." As they began planting explosive charges at key structural points, the clash of weapons echoed through the corridors. Rylo's security forces had detected their presence. Karak roared, charging headlong into a squad of shock troopers. His massive fists sent armored bodies flying as Zara and her team provided covering fire. "We're running out of time!" Zara shouted, priming another charge. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the far side of the facility. Through the smoke and debris, Zara caught a glimpse of Vera's strike team pouring through the breach. "Zara!" Vera's voice crackled over the comm. "We've got a problem. They're building something here, some kind of doomsday weapon. We need to—" The transmission cut off in a burst of static. Zara's blood ran cold as she realized the true stakes of their mission. Outside, Titan reeled under a barrage of fire from Rylos's flagship. Will gritted his teeth, pouring every ounce of the Mech's power into its shields. "We can't hold them much longer," his tactical officer shouted. Will's mind raced, searching for a solution. Then, through the chaos of battle, he saw it, a gap in Rylos's formation, a chance to turn the tide. "All ships," he commanded, his voice ringing with authority, "form up on Titan. We're punching through their lines." As the rebel fleet maneuvered into position, Will's thoughts turned to Zara, to Vera, to all those fighting and dying within the forge. He steeled himself for what was to come, knowing that the future of the cosmos hung in the balance. The rebel fleet emerged from warp, a kaleidoscope of ships materializing against the inky void. At their center loomed Titan, its massive frame dwarfing even the largest cruisers. Will Freeman's eyes narrowed as he took in the vast expanse of the Nexus, a colossal space station that pulsed with malevolent energy. "All ships, report in," he commanded, his voice steady despite the tension thrumming through his body. As the Allied forces sounded off, Will's gaze swept over the assembled armada. Azalian fighters swarmed like angry insects, their sleek forms glinting in the starlight. Newly liberated warships from Corvin and Shri took up flanking positions, their weapons primed and hungry. "Zara, Lara, you're clear to engage," Will said, a hint of pride coloring his words as he thought of the reunited sisters. "Acknowledged," Zara's voice crackled through the comm. "Azalian squadrons, form up on me. We'll draw their fire." The fighters accelerated, streaking towards the Nexus outer defenses. Energy beams lanced out, carving fiery paths through space. Zara's voice rang out, calling targets and issuing orders as her sister's fighter wove a deadly dance at her wing. On Titan's bridge, Vera's fingers tightened around the controls of her command station. "Strike teams are prepped and ready," she reported, her eyes burning with barely contained fury. "Just say the word." Will nodded, his mind racing through tactical calculations. "Kragoth, what's your status?" The former pack-led mercenary's gravelly voice filled the command center. "Corvin, our mechs are in position. Stealth systems engaged. We're going in." As Kragoth's cloaked warriors slipped past the Nexus's outer defenses, Will gave the order. "All ships, commence bombardment. Titan, prepare main cannon." Space erupted in a symphony of destruction. Energy beams and missile salvos pummeled the Nexus, targeting its power cores and weapons arrays. Titan's main cannon roared to life, a column of pure devastation slamming into the station's reinforced hull. Inside the Nexus, alarms blared as the station shuddered under the assault. On the command bridge, Rilo stood impassive, his cold eyes taking in the chaos around him. Without warning, he raised his sidearm and fired, the energy blast catching a panicking officer in the chest. "Incompetence will not be tolerated," Rylos growled, his voice devoid of emotion. "Deploy the reality slicer. Show these insects the price of defiance." A massive array hummed to life, crackling with barely contained energy. The beam lanced out, a blinding streak of destruction that carved through space itself. Shrian cruisers split apart like overripe fruit, their hulls peeling away as if made of paper. "Evasive maneuvers," Zara shouted, her fighter corkscrewing wildly to avoid the reality slicer's path. "All units, break formation." Will's mind focused as he watched the destruction unfold. "Vera, you're up. Get your teams inside that station and shut down that weapon." Vera's strike pods rocketed away from Titan, weaving through the maelstrom of battle. They slammed into the Nexus's armored hide, cutting torches blazing as they carved entry points. The corridors of the Nexus became killing grounds as Vera's teams clashed with Rylos's shock troopers. Energy weapons flashed, and the acrid stench of ozone filled the air. Mechanical monstrosities, the dreaded breacher cyborgs, lumbered forward, their augmented bodies shrugging off conventional weapons fire. Just as the tide began to turn against the strike teams, shadows coalesced into solid forms. Kragoth's Corvinar warriors decloaked, their advanced weaponry tearing through the pack-led defenses. "Push forward!" Vera shouted, her voice raw with exertion. "We need to reach the control nexus." In the heart of the station, Will's fingers flew across Titan's command interface. Lines of code streamed past as he initiated the forced reboot of the pack-led network. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he raced against time. A proximity alert blared, and Will's head snapped up. On the main view screen, he watched in horror as the reality slicer began to pivot, its muzzle now aimed directly at the Nexus itself. "He's gone mad," Will whispered, realization dawning. "Rylos is going to destroy everything." The comm crackled to life, Vera's voice tight with urgency. "Will, we've reached the master control room, but we're pinned down. We need a distraction, now." Will's mind raced, weighing options and discarding them just as quickly. The reality slicer's energy readings spiked, the weapon building to a cataclysmic discharge. With seconds left before annihilation, Will made his choice. "All ships," he commanded, his voice ringing with steel. "Concentrate fire on these coordinates. Everything you've got. As the Allied armada unleashed its combined firepower, Will's fingers danced across Titan's controls. The massive Mech systems strained as he pushed them beyond their limits, preparing for one final, bold strategy. Will's fingers flew across Titan's command interface, initiating a sequence that would push the Mech beyond its limits. All ships, clear the area. Emergency subwarp translation in progress. Space warped around Titan's massive frame as Will engaged the experimental drive. Reality itself seemed to bend and fold, the stars blurring into streaks of light. With a thunderous crack, Titan phased through the Nexus superstructure, materializing inside the station's central reactor chamber. The sudden appearance of the planet-sized Mech sent shockwaves through the chamber. Rylos, his face contorted with rage, spun to face the new threat. "Impossible!" he snarled, his eyes wild with madness. Will wasted no time. Titan's mechadendrites unfurled, colossal neural-linked tentacles stretching out to grapple with the pulsing beam of the reality slicer. The nightmarish energy fought against Titan's grip, threatening to tear the Mech apart. "Rerouting power," Will shouted, his voice echoing through Titan's internal comm system. "Diverting the beam back into the Nexus core." Outside, Zara's voice crackled over the comm. "We've breached the shields. Strike teams, move in." Rylos's cybernetically enhanced elite troopers swarmed towards Titan, their augmented bodies scaling the Mech's exterior. Will gritted his teeth, fighting to maintain control as alarms blared throughout Titan's systems. Inside the Mech's corridors, Vera led her strike team in a desperate push to reach Will. Energy weapons flashed in the cramped spaces as they clashed with Rylos's forces. Kragoth's Corvin R warriors decloaked, their advanced weaponry tearing through the Pakled defenses. "Push forward," Vera shouted, her voice raw with exertion. "We need to reach the command center." On the reactor platform, Will emerged from Titan's cockpit, facing Rylos in a final confrontation. The two leaders circled each other, the air crackling with the unleashed energies of the reality slicer. "You've lost, Rylos," Will growled, his eyes never leaving his opponent. "It's over." Rylos sneered, raising a crackling energy weapon. "Nothing is over, human. I'll tear this galaxy apart before I surrender." They clashed in a brutal melee, trading blows as the reactor chamber shuddered around them. Will fought with everything he had, but Rylos's cybernetic enhancements gave him an inhuman advantage. Suddenly, Vera burst onto the platform, her eyes widening as she took in the scene. Without hesitation, she hurled herself at Rylos, catching him off guard. "Will, now!" she screamed. Time seemed to slow as Vera pushed Rylos into the path of the reality slicer beam. The madman's body disintegrated in a burst of blinding energy, but Vera was caught in the backlash. Her form flickered, molecules coming apart as the beam tore through her. "Vera!" Will cried out, reaching for her. She managed a small smile, her body already fading. "Finish it, Will. Save them all." With a heavy heart, Will turned back to Titan's controls. He initiated the final sequence, overriding the reality slicer's safeguards and causing it to feed back into itself. Space-time ruptured, an ever-expanding singularity forming at the heart of the Nexus. As the Allied ships fled the spreading destruction, Will realized the terrible truth. Titan was the only force capable of containing the tear in space-time, preventing it from devouring the entire galaxy. The Mech, powered by a human soul, would have to act as a living anchor to the singularity. Will's mind raced, searching for alternatives but finding none. He opened a comm channel to the escaping rebel ships. "Zara, Lara, everyone, I'm sorry. There's no other way." Zara's voice came back, choked with emotion. "Will, no! There has to be another option." "There isn't," Will replied, his tone resolute. "Titan has to stay. I have to stay." As the singularity expanded, consuming the Nexus from within, Will began the upload of his neural imprint into Titan's vast system core. His physical body started to disintegrate, atoms scattering as he became one with the Mech. The last rebel shuttles streaked away from the collapsing station. Will Titan stood at the edge of oblivion, projecting a stabilizing quantum field to hold the cosmic breach at bay. As his consciousness merged fully with Titan's systems, Will gave a final salute to his departing comrades. The singularity engulfed the Nexus, collapsing into a contained, endless cycle. At its heart stood Titan, guardian and prisoner of the cosmic rift. Will Freeman, now the immortal spirit within the Mech, began his eternal vigil. In the void of space, Titan's massive form drifted, bathed in the eerie blue glow of its containment field. The Mech's systems hummed with a single, unwavering purpose: to safeguard existence itself from the chaos it now held at bay.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.